All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January Growers Conference call. I think we'll have a great conversation tonight. We've got some good guests and whatnot. While people are still joining in, Jim, are you ready to get going?
You got me, Russ?
Yep, we got you loud and clear.
Okay, very good. Appreciate it, Russ. Yeah, this is Jim Halbeisen. I'm kind of running the conference calls now. And what we try to do is feature the picture that we have in the grower's calendar. And for this month, it's Marty Whitsitt and a customer of Marty. And we want them to come on, talk a little bit about their business. And Jim Seiler, he's a peach grower, has other crops also. And his daughter's participating in the flower market. And again, James Schlitz has been discussing this in the solution diversification for guys. And Beverly Mass, who was a district manager for us in Pennsylvania, had a very good flower grower years ago when I started full-time with the company and did an excellent job. And he said it was a great diversification for him, difficult. So this is the type of thing we want to bring that forward, and maybe we can give you some ideas on that. So what we've been doing at the conference call is kind of covering the current events that are happening in agriculture now to give guys a broad scope of what's actually happening. When you're focused on a particular part of production, you kind of miss out on some of the other things. So we try to paint a broad brush here, give you some ideas, and then that allows the gentleman whose picture's on the calendar, in this case Marty Whitsitt, Marty will get on, and then he'll have his customers and they will discuss that. Usually Chris Coles and James Schlitz come on with me, but they went to South Carolina this week. They had a difficult time getting down there because of the weather, and did meetings for a few days, and we're going to go to the Savannah show in Savannah, Georgia, but they decided to send another storm across, and so they are hightailing it for home tonight. And I called them and said, hey, if you guys got the hammer down, we'll handle this. And if you want to listen, fine, you don't have to participate. But I called the gentleman they were working with, Terry Norris. Terry's our district manager in South Carolina, North Carolina. And I just wanted Terry to give us a broad overview of what's happening down there. And we'll bring Terry on as we get to the bottom of the hour and let him expand a little bit on that. I see Terry's on the call. All he's got to do is unmute himself, and we'll let him go ahead and talk about that. Really, the number one thing I think that farmers have to look at right now is the WASNI report that comes out tomorrow, and that's going to determine the final production numbers in the U.S. for corn and beans and wheat. But again, that's going to have a major effect. And some of the people say to me, well, if they would specialize in fruits and vegetables, then they wouldn't have to worry quite as much about the commodity crops. But the reality is, when there was $6 corn or $7 corn, the vegetable processors had to ante up also. So the commodity thing goes all the way down the line. And right now, the prognosticators or the government is telling us Brazil's got a whopper of a crop going down there. However, if you look at some of the weather forecasts, for example, Matt Gooding has been chatting about this for a period of time, that there's some dryness. And basically they're saying Argentina has had about 15% of their total rainfall. Now, Brazil is the largest producer of soybeans, and through deforestation, they've built quite an acreage down there, and they've had some decent weather. Right now, they've got plenty of moisture in the northern part of Brazil, but the southern part, where Argentina is next to them, that's very dry. And that 15% of normal rainfall, it hasn't cut into the yield yet, but within another 14, 21 days, then we could start to see a little bit of difference there. So that has put a little starch under the market because Argentina is also a fairly large corn producer. And corn right now is back to a price that we haven't seen since about the middle of June. So there's been some retrenchment there. And for you Canadian farmers that are listening, you've got a Canadian guy up there that talks about the markets, and he made a very interesting point on DTN here recently, is that what we're seeing is the major exporters of corn, their carryover corn stocks are basically right now at an 18-year low. And if you look at the graph that he basically put out, it hasn't been this low since about maybe 2002, 2006, something like that. And he said, the report tomorrow, they're going to have to adjust for that. And again, they don't have to, but we'll see where that goes as far as demand is concerned, because the U.S. demand for ethanol has been fantastic. They're basically 4% higher than what they were running last year, which again was an excess year also. So the demand for fuel has really carved into the market. So it could be a mover tomorrow. But again, some of you guys, their corn and beans are up tonight. And if they take a major jump in the morning, some guys may want to take a look at that. That's just it's going to be a fairly interesting report, and see where this thing takes us. But again, the weather this week with the snowstorm, ice storm, basically they're still talking that 70% of the crop area in the U.S. has some amount of drought. There's a very small amount of severe drought, but sizable drought is still a fairly large area. And I think the Mississippi River is pretty well talking about that, guys. They're at a low level. They've come back to some degree, but they're still not back to any kind of normal movement there. So we know that this is an issue, and it's definitely been affecting the cattle market. Fertilizer prices, that's the other thing most guys want to talk about. What we're seeing is that nitrogen and potassium are fairly stable. We haven't seen a big jump in either one of those. Again, potassium is a North American market. There's reports that in Europe that there's been a very high usage of natural gas because of the temperature that we've got in Europe. And the same thing is a factor here, but we're peanuts compared to production in Europe as far as nitrogen is concerned. So it's fairly stable at this point, but they're saying to replenish that is going to take some summer activity. So going into the spring, we could see that nitrogen post up a little bit. Talking to our guys that have experience, Gerald Hirsch down at the docks in Baltimore, they're saying it's fairly stable right now, but nobody's really talking about if they're going to be seeing any kind of increase. Now, phosphorus, totally different ballgame, guys. Our suppliers are telling us this could get to be a real problem because China and Russia are two of the largest suppliers of phosphorus. And both of them, they got their problems in the Ukraine. China's overall economy is struggling because, trinket purchases are down. People, they're loading up the credit cards, but the amount of trinkets that's going onto the credit card here in this country has slowed down quite a bit. That's put a real crimp in the Chinese economy. Now, they say they're holding back because they want to have enough for their farmers. Well, that's glossing it over because they've got plenty for their farmers. They're just basically trying to deal with the new politics that they're going to be seeing here with the new administration, in my opinion. So our guys did a fantastic job on this. They went after North American production. They were able to do that through some of the contacts that Jim Ward has established in the other businesses he's working in. Been very, very helpful to us. Him and Matt have done an excellent job with those. trying to lock that down. And they're telling us they're going to honor these contracts. And again, that's all we got to go on, guys. What we're finding out, like in the shipping business right now, man, there's some weird things going on. This inflation thing, we were looking at doing some diking in some areas, and I'll tell you what the increase in these costs are, and our experience before COVID and now after COVID, it's just unbelievable. And I think all farmers realize that. Cost of parts. Keith Shutt has been telling me what the cost of bearings and other parts in the spreading business have just escalated tremendously. So again, this cost of fertilizer, this is something you're going to have to keep a close eye on, in my opinion. Now, what goes along with that, guys, is the American Relief Act. There is a senator from Arkansas, basically, that came to the table when the government looked like it was going to shut down. They needed more funding. And he said, before we're going to go along with any kind of new funding, we are basically going to help our food producers, because what inflation has done to them, what prices have done to them, they just can't operate. So basically, they came up with $20 billion, but that was basically set for natural disasters, like the natural disaster in northern North Carolina from the flooding, down along the Gulf of Mexico, where it comes into Florida and Georgia and Alabama, the hurricanes there. They set that up to supply some of those natural disasters. But there's $10 billion that's just a flat out giveaway to farmers, because they're saying the inflation rate on just doing business and what the prices have done from the heights that they were at. Now, what we have started conducting these Friday calls for our sales force. We used to send out a sales letter every month to try to keep our guys informed of what prices we're doing, or raw material, supplies we're doing, and then kind of current events. But it's just like everybody else, reading got to be a lost art. And so I think Russ did a real nice job putting this conference call together for our sales force to try to keep guys up to date. And basically what we talked about, on the last call is this money, from what I'm reading, is going to be available to everyone. You're not going to have crop insurance. I talked to a couple guys that talked to their customers that thought they would have had to have some kind of crop insurance coverage. I'm under the impression, from what I read, that's not necessarily the case. Now, University of Nebraska on the general websites, I picked this up off of Google, was talking about actually getting the funding going for your farm. And I thought they would talk a little bit about the process. They were just telling what the payments are, basically. And see, that's what we kind of covered last Friday, to let you guys know, to tell their customers that this is something, that you can be looking for or asking about. Now, to me, I'm saying that this has probably got to be something with FSA, could be NRCS, but I doubt it would be more from Farm Services. And the title of this act is the American Relief Act. And the article I saw on AgWeb basically broke down each state and the amount of money that's allotted for this $10 billion. In other words, the $20 billion, that has to do with any kind of weather impact or disaster impact that you have. This $10 billion is supposedly just giveaway money, and it's going to be based on crops. And what this particular article stated was that the per acre payment rates by crop are $87 on cotton, 42 on corn, 30 on beans, 30 on wheat, 42 on sorghum, 77 on oats, 76 on peanuts, 69 on rice, and 22 on barley. And so, talking to several of our district managers, I told these guys, to let your clientele base know to be proactive about this. Just waiting for it, I think, would be a mistake. When they wrote the law, it claimed that doing that, it required the government to cough this money up in 90 days. So they basically did this around Christmas time. So we're talking, in the middle of March, basically. And see, I think this senator from Arkansas really pushed through with that because he felt he needed money in the hands of his clientele, by that timing. So they had something to work with. So again, I think being proactive with it, guys, it doesn't hurt anything. I don't think you're getting your name on a black sheet or anything like that. I think you just got to ask questions and see what the final thing was on it. Because basically the politicians wanted to tie it to the farm bill. Well, there's no way with the SNAP amount that's going out to the general population could they ever get a farm bill through that fast. And so I think these farm state legislators basically said we're going to go with away with the giveaway program. And so I just think anybody that's in the business, man, that I think you're something that can be very helpful to you. If you don't take it, great. But again, knowing what's happening, I think could be very, very helpful to you. The next thing then we wanted to talk a little bit about is the cattle market. I know it deflated today. The advisor, this Vaklovic out of Tennessee, the Mackenzie, the woman that works with him, she's a cattleman or cattlewoman. And she said they took a hammer to them today, but they're at very lofty numbers right now, even after they got the hammer today. And she was saying, and I mentioned this last Friday, that the New World screwworm that they found in southern Mexico, they basically have shut off any cattle coming out of Mexico, and that is added to the price of cattle. They're saying by January 20th, they think they're going to lift that ban. But there's not been much said about it here recently, so knowing where that's headed, but where the price is now, and several things are playing into that. There was just a report that came out talking about, the questions that the cattle market has to answer. And the first one is, when will we start to see significant heifer retention? And they ain't happening now. And see how much they will retain. It's got a lot to do with how much grass is available. And again, all the indications are we're still in that 70% of productive land being in some kind of drought situation. So the only thing that can really put the hurts to the cattle market would be chickens or hogs making inroads there. Chickens, I don't see it happening with the price of eggs, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But as far as the pig market is concerned, everybody is still consuming a certain amount of beef. There's been articles saying that as people have backed away from going to Mickey Do's or eating out and coming home, one of the easiest things to deal with is hamburger. So that's really kept a demand on fresh beef. So that's really helped hold that market in there. And as long as there's nothing in the economy that really cuts back on the usage per se, I think the cattle market is got some starch to it for a while. That's what these guys are basically saying. 26 is going to be the first we could see any dent in that price. Then right away, that leads us to the bird flu discussion. And that thing has really gotten a lot of traction, guys. We're seeing on mainstream media now where they're talking about it. Even the conservative networks have been mentioning it lately, but mainstream now has really been going after it and bringing EMDs in. And the thing that's really drawn the attention to it is they did lose a human down in Louisiana. He was infected from a backyard collection of birds, which again I would say is probably fighting chickens. But he had a lot of other precursor things that he was dealing with also. But they've actually found some humans that have contracted it from cats of all things. And see, what's happening is it's coming into cat food. And see, I think it's our district manager in New York talked about this when it became a big problem in dairy cows. John Sensenig said right out of school, he worked in, a feed manufacturer. And he said, they bring those bird feathers in and they're just loaded with manure and they process those into protein supplements. And he said that would be carrying the virus right to the animals. And that's become a big problem. There's been several very huge articles about milk. And see, they've gone after the raw milk people, saying that if the animal does have bird flu, that if it's pasteurized, the virus is basically dead. It's kind of interesting in this article, they were talking about, exactly how these, it says, some farmers are first identifying outbreaks in their herds through the color and density of the milk, in which they are coining the term golden mastitis. And that basically has been published in the milkweed. And I know some of you guys have been looking at the milkweed for a long time. And see, that's created quite a stink, in the mainstream media. Now, the MDs that they've been bringing on the mainstream media is saying that the transfer from human to human, they haven't found that yet. They're saying it's a very huge possibility as the virus mutates. So right now, the humans that have picked it up have either picked it up from a bird or picked it up from a cow or picked it up from a feline or a cat. They've actually lost some zoo animals, like tigers or cheetahs. And again, when they find the virus, it's basically coming out of the feed. And see, again, they would, in my opinion, and I don't know anything about feeding cats, I would think they'd want the protein fairly high, so they're stuffing the feather meal to it. And that's probably what's giving it to these cats. And see, then they're transferring it to the human. They don't have that human-to-human contact. If that comes up, guys, you got to be watching closely, because some of the articles are saying the first thing is they got to build the vaccine supply, and that's the first thing the government will do. And they're saying that this could be problematic. It's not like COVID-19. It's as far as being sick, it's more of a respiratory thing. And see that with older people, the COVID, getting the flu is bad, but if you got respiratory problems, that's a real issue. So again, if we see this human-to-human transfer, and in the meantime, our dairymen are going to get the hammer handed to them. Guys that have tried to go the raw milk route, this has been perfect for the government to put the kibosh to it. You got to get it pasteurized. And we've got some customers that are selling their own milk, but they are pasteurizing. They're using the lower temperature pasteurization because you get less enzyme destruction. It's a lot healthier milk. So again, that puts a real slug into the guy's operation, basically. So the dairy thing, and then the bird flu thing, we've got a local guy that we're buying eggs from, but they tell me in the grocery store they've just catapulted to the moon. And there's been articles talking about, well, you got to wash your eggs and all that to make sure. But that pretty well tells you. And the other thing is, there was a very nice article, I brought this up on the sales call, is that the government is insuring these flocks. And some of these big feeders, they're collecting on these flocks at certain facilities 2 and 3 times. And in some cases, they're saying the amount of payment that's going to some of these operations is, $150 million. And see, right now, the government is saying that's a real draw on the government, like it is for the insurance industries. And what they're doing is trying to force these guys to have better sanitation procedures. But there's been research done on that with the dairy cows in California, and some of the ones with the best biosecurity methods, they got the worst case of bird flu of any of them, right in the heart of the actual operation. You know, they're milking 20,000 cows, and the facility that's right in the center that should have the best biosecurity's got the worst problem. So again, I don't think they really know how this thing transfers. You know, when we had TGE back in the 80s, man, the birds just brought it in like crazy. And you can confine them as much as you want, but man, those birds, they find out how to get in there, and right away you've got transfer. So I think the vets are still, they're going to try to defend themselves, but still what we're seeing in the biosecurity. But the government's telling these guys, if you aren't implementing those kind of procedures, you know, these payments are going to start slowing down quite significantly. And see, it tells you that operations that are getting 2 and 3 payments, they're reinfecting all the time. So you would think they would have biosecurity figured out, but evidently they don't. And the payment, I think, is kind of a guarantee for them that they can make, you know, a little more money. Another thing that I would like to talk about briefly, it was a very nice article that came out. And again, it was like mainstream. It was not an agricultural article, but basically came from University of Kansas is actually where it came from. And what they were doing there is studying bug in the jug. And see, this has been a big discussion point now with soil health. Actually, the title of the article is pretty interesting. Soil health is big business, but some research shows fungal products don't work as promised. And see, the thing I pointed out to our sales guys is that in every state you have a agricultural institution. You know, for us, it's the Ohio State University. Illinois, it's University of Illinois. Minnesota, it's University of Minnesota. And then other institutions in Kansas, Kansas State is the cow college, whereas the University of Kansas is, you know, they deal with engineering, they deal with, you know, medical and that type of thing. And this research is being done by botany and biology. It's not being done by, you know, agronomy. And what they did basically was take a bunch of these products and do some testing on them. And the final conclusion was after 200 products, 88% of them didn't do what they were supposed to do. And some of it is from, they were analyzing the products themselves. They didn't find any of the fungal spores in it. They didn't find the actual fungus. They did find some with spores, but the spores were dead completely. And then some of them were just fertility products. So again, what the whole gist of this Kansas article is that they want to bring in regulatory oversight on the bug in the jugs. Right now, there's no regulatory oversight for what they put on the bottles for what you're supposed to be getting. And see, all of the soil health guys that are using liquid carbon, guys that are using any kind of sugar. See, none of these have any regulatory issues like we do at growers. In other words, when our product goes out, we are subject to testing to make sure that we have the 10-20-10 product that we say we have. And see, this is what these guys are saying. They think there needs to be some regulatory process on the bug in the jug, and see if they do what they say they can do, or if they even have anything in there that will do what they say they will do. And so that could get to be a big issue for that business, and it's going to be a cost factor for them, just no doubt about it. One other thing I want to talk a little bit about before we get started with everybody else is there was a nice article that appeared in the Progressive Farmer. And the title of the article was, if you're using a new compound, you need the jar test. And I got some district managers that are trying to get into other areas, and they're being questioned by the potential customers about what our product will mix with. And this article does a very nice job of mentioning that the key is not the active ingredients of the product, the fungicide or the insecticide or the pesticide. It is the inert ingredients that they carry it with, because by law, they are not required to state what those inert ingredients are. They can change them. That's why the law is written that way. And see, that inert ingredient is what's going to react with the growers. That's going to react with other compounds. That's going to react with the water. And they do mention water in there, that you got to be very careful with the different types of water and how you're working with them. So again, we've beat this dead horse for a long time, and guys are always on my case. You don't ever talk about anything new, Jim. Well, hey, we got to solve the old problems, and water integrity is a big thing. And mixing us with other products, that jar test that's the gold standard, man. And they actually mentioned in there that when they change those inert ingredients, you can go from different lot numbers, and it mixes great with one lot number. You get a new lot number, and it'll totally gel on you. And see, we've seen that happen to us in the business over 70 years, guys. So again, jar testing, I know it takes time. Guys don't want to screw with it, but it's really the gold standard. If you're, particularly with all the questions we're getting now about this freeze damage on peaches, for example, which Mr. Seiler will talk a little bit about. What can you mix it with? Because they're out there spraying all the time. Can we get the growers in there? We think there are a lot of compounds you can mix it with, but you have to do that jar test, man. We aren't taking any responsibility for the mixing, but we know guys are still going to do it. You better do that jar test so you don't end up with 500 gallons of mayonnaise, because it could very well happen. So, Terry, Mr. Norris, if you can unmute yourself, I would really like to see you get on and talk a little bit about Chris Coles and James Schlitz this week, and whether they were helpful for you down there or if they were an impediment to you. What we like to do is get around the country and help guys and hopefully expand the business a little bit. So, Terry, I know you're out there because I saw your number, and I can't quite find you. Yeah, there you are. So if you can figure out how to unmute yourself. Terry and I have been working together for a long time, and I kind of they sent me a video, or actually a snapshot on my text, where the boys were consuming chicken bog down there. And I'll tell you right now, guys, I've eaten a lot of different things, but that chicken bog, man, that's in a league by itself. So I kind of missed out on that this year, and hoping that we'll get that changed around, and we'll get back at it. So, Stephen, I see you're. Well, Terry's still there. Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I'm on.
Rip, Terry. Yeah, tell us what the boys did, and I really would like you to just talk a little bit about what the Southern farmers are dealing with and what you see down there.
Yeah, with Chris and James, we had to pretty much cut them off. They were just eating too much.
I understand.
I think, James had like 3 plates of the chicken bog.
And that's
a
smart boy.
Yeah, but we really had some good meetings. We had like 3 in one day, and they were very productive. I think we're going to see some good results out of that. But, talking about our season, we had all kind of problems, one right behind another one. We had 5 weeks of drought at one time. And then on top of that, it got so hot that the corn and everything else just quit pollinating. And then we started having storms, and they were tearing up from Florida, Georgia, both the Carolinas, and God knows where else. But anyway, the guys, from what we were hearing at the meetings and stuff, they really hadn't got, well, a lot of them that did have some, we had areas that had pretty good corn, some that didn't. It was just spotted around, and we had the same reaction on the soybeans and tobacco also. But they were holding on to their products, their corn, soybeans, trying to hold them as long as they could to get the price up, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's kind of held up a little bit of the sales, although I think we've done fairly decent under the circumstances. And hopefully that's going to get a lot better.
Your vegetable boys, Terry, how did they weather the different weather this year?
One of our top guys, he had right when his produce started to bloom and set some fruit, they had hail and just shredded everything. They had it shredded the tobacco also that was in the area. It beat his house up, for crying out loud. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
And I mean, it was just a terrible time in areas.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of miles away from that, they didn't have that problem, but it was kind of like a streak that went through for about maybe 5 miles with this hailstorm, and it just, I mean, it shredded everything, and that put all the guys in those areas in just a bad mood.
Yeah. How did that affect the tobacco? Were they able to salvage any of that, or did that pretty well destroy it for them?
Tobacco was small enough till it grew out of most of that, and we were doing real good. It came out and made a pretty good crop, and then we got too much rain at the end of it, and the tobacco just drowned pretty bad before they could get it out of the field. And overall, though, I think some of them used some fertilizer growers to help bring it out, and they told me that it did a really good job, and the tobacco cured out pretty decent, a lot better than they thought it was going to do. So that kind of made us look good.
So he's got decent calcium too. You're talking about Greg Huggins, so I'm assuming that his calcium is pretty decent on most of it.
We are, right. Yeah. And overall, his tobacco really came out good.
Good.
He's a real decent tobacco farmer. There's a couple more in that area that are good farmers also. And their tobacco came out pretty good, and they were using growers. But we had some that just, it was over once we got the rain from those storms.
Sure.
I mean, they didn't even try. They didn't want to spend any more money in it.
Right.
But according to those guys that did, said that it paid off. So
good.
That's a plus.
Yep.
And I think a lot of them right now are still waiting on some kind of disaster money to help them out so that they can. Well, I got one that he always buys at 10%, and so they hadn't got the money at 10%. They didn't get it at 8%, and now we're at 6%, and he's still waiting to get the money so he can.
Sure. Yeah. Well, see, that's part of that disaster fund, and again, we'll probably be out of discounts by the time some of that comes. It just depends on how fast the government works. So
that's right. The way it looks, you were talking, say, middle of March. That's going to probably be out of range.
Yeah.
Of course, I think with the 5% we got that you buy any time during the season. I think that's probably going to help some.
Sure. Yeah.
It's really had the Carolina guys and probably parts of Georgia also that just got them in a bad way. We were talking with some at the meeting on Wednesday night at Laurel Lewis's place, and they were excited that we got a new administration going in pretty soon, and they hoping that that's going to turn things around for the farmers. So
sure,
we're still all hoping that that's going to happen, which I think it will. If he does anywhere close to what he did last time, I think he'll do actually a better job this time. He's got a little bit more help, I think, this time. So we all looking forward to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. Hey, Terry, I appreciate it. That gives our guys in the network a little bit of perspective of what you guys deal with down there, and really appreciate it. Hopefully, James and Chris were helpful and not a negative for you.
Yeah, I did my best to train them all I could.
That's your job.
Overall, really, I really was impressed. And James, that was his first actual where he put on a PowerPoint.
Good.
The first time, and he did a good job.
Excellent. Appreciate that, Terry.
We didn't get him a standing ovation, but hey, I think it's coming.
We'll keep the training going.
Yeah. Anyway, though, I enjoyed having the guys, and we did a really good job, I think.
Good job, Terry. Appreciate it.
Hey, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Jim, it's Chris Coles.
Yeah, I hear you. Were you trying to defend yourself or what?
Well, yeah. Hey, I have, it was an action, we were a day late getting out of here because of weather and left a day early because of weather. So it was definitely a challenge, but I'll tell you, it's beautiful driving through the mountains on dry roads and snowy. But anyway, hey, Terry, you got to tell about the visit after the meeting. One of the guys that didn't show up that was supposed to be there, and he was in the neighborhood. So we decided to stop by. Tell him that story. You got to tell him that, Terry.
Yeah, the guy we were actually looking for was the son, and he was out, I think, hauling corn or beans, one of them, and his truck broke down, so he couldn't go to the meeting, so we dropped by his operation, and his dad was there, and turns out he was my age. He had lost his wife a short while back, same as I did, and we had a really lot in common. He married a younger lady, and so did I, and he just was so impressed with how close our relationship was in our family deal, So he told us, he said, come back in 2 weeks and try to pick a rainy day. And he says he thinks he is a big butter bean operator. Of course, he's corn and soybeans, and but I think he had like 350 acres of butter beans, and he had been up to like 450, I think.
Yeah.
But he was big enough.
Get the lime.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think they're into that program too, which we really, all of us talked about that with him, and he says, I'm gonna have my son really listen to this program. Of course, I've talked with his son, and he's interested in our program.
That's interesting.
Very
good.
Most produce guys are, if they, want to stay in business.
Yep. Very good. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Yes, sir.
Thanks again. Take care.
Hey, Marty Whitsitt, I think you're on deck, man. So
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Great, loud and clear. So
we'll get right at it. Jenna,
I'm going to turn it over to you, and you handle it any way you want to handle it.
Are you on there with me, Jenna?
Yes, I'm here.
You're here. If mommy duties call, we all understand. Just let us know.
Okay, I'm fine right now.
We're looking at that picture on the January calendar, the flowers look beautiful. I saw those arrangements, and of course, pictures don't do justice on things like that. Tell us a little bit about how you got started raising flowers. I know you said it was a hobby at first, but let us know a
Yeah,
little bit how you got that marketed and how you got started in that.
sure. So I'm actually a dental hygienist, but post COVID, it turned into not a very enjoyable job.
Yeah.
um, and, be nice to your hygienist, please. But my husband travels pretty extensively, and we built actually on my family's orchard. My dad, Jim's in here at Lakeview Orchards, so we're right here, and there was a little spot right next to the sales building that looked like it would be good to grow flowers on. So I convinced some people to clear it out for me. And instead of going into it slowly, I think I started about 1,000 seeds the first year, planted them all out, and it went great. Um, Initially, I just started selling them at the orchard, but pretty quickly, florists started talking to me about it. And I would go into the florist with just buckets of what I grew to give to them. And most of them wanted them all. And so I honestly, the growers, it's funny because the first year I didn't know much about anything, honestly. And towards the end of the season, everything always goes downhill, right? I mean, flowers, you get powdery mildew and they just look terrible. And I started noticing that they weren't getting terrible and I was exhausted, and my dad would just laugh at me. And um, turns out he had been going and spraying that on them. I had no idea, and they just kept going and going and going. So the second year, that's all I started to use. And I didn't use a ton of it with the seed starting mix, which is what I am going to do this coming year. Because most of the seed starting mixes are sterile and they don't have much in them. And I'm going to try and use just a really diluted amount of the growers and see how they do, and kind of do a side by side of
Hmm.
starting them with it and starting them without it, and just to see what the difference is. But yeah, honestly, the florist side of things is where I think the local flower farms will really take off. I think I read 78% of flowers are imported in.
Wow.
And I've already had two florists that I have never worked with before get a hold of me because they're worried about the tariffs that could be coming
Mm.
um, with imported flowers, and they're wanting to get pretty much everything from me. So that's a huge part of it. But with the growers, especially the florists, a lot of them were leery at first of local because a lot of times they don't look as perfect. You know, everything that comes in is sprayed to hold and to last and all of that. And they're kind of used to their backyard growers bringing in stuff that's, bug eaten and doesn't look great. So it's really convincing them that it looks good, and, getting them fertilized is a huge part of it.
That's what I was wondering. Why did the florist contact you in the first place? I mean, was it the flowers? I mean, I know your dad started with growers because I was such a nice guy and he thought I had an honest face. But was it the quality of the flowers that got the florist attracted to it, or did they really say?
Yeah, so I use the orchard's Facebook, so I don't do much there, but Instagram, honestly, I'm Blooms by Lakeview on there. Um, I'm pretty good at taking pictures and marketing, and so I would just take a lot of pictures and post really nice ones. And honestly, a lot of the florists reached out to me through
Wow.
that from seeing that. But marketing really um, is huge part of it. And there's a lot of Facebook groups. Flower Farmers is one, and then Cut Flowers 101. If you tell them a product in there, those people will grab it up. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people in these groups, and if something works, they're going to use it. So that's definitely something. I mean, it'd be smaller accounts, I think, but if anyone was ever interested in marketing like that, those groups are just, you have one person with pretty pictures of nice flowers, they're all going to want it.
Mm. Yeah, we only deal with tanker loads. We don't deal with anybody
Yeah.
in small amounts, right?
Yeah. Well, there's big farmers in there too, though. The bigger flowers farmers are in there too. But yeah, that's also though why I just, I took not a huge loss, but I would fill a bucket up with my flowers and just take those into the florist, just walk in and take them in there and give them that bucket and say, hey, here's who I am. Here's my flowers and what they look like. You're welcome to try these out and see if you like them. And let me know if you want more.
Did they give much feedback on that other than just saying bring more?
Honestly, they all have loved them.
Okay.
I haven't gotten almost any negative feedback, which
Yeah.
it would be great to have some. But
I brought some of those home to my wife after we were there this summer and to get some brownie points, and they held on a lot better than the garbage you pick up at Walmart.
Well, the imported ones, they're already past their prime when they're coming in. And initially, I tried to only grow like the dahlias, right? They don't ship well. And so wedding designers too are a huge part of my business. They want the dahlias, they want the different stuff that they can't get, or that they get it at the wholesalers and it looks terrible. And so I try to grow a lot of what they can't get there, but honestly, I'm growing what they can get as well. And they're seeing the quality difference in what I'm bringing them and then, what they can get at the wholesale market. But it's really just convincing them that I can grow as well as what they can get from the wholesaler.
Yeah.
So that's where just taking the product in there and showing them what I have and giving that to them, that's gone the furthest.
Mm-hmm.
But
so one other question for you. When we were there this summer, I saw something I hadn't seen before. The flowers that were just off to the side of where this picture was taken, you had what looked like little silk baggies over the flower blossom. What was that for?
So the dahlias, that's florists want perfect flowers. They cannot have someone pay, $100 for a flower arrangement and have bugs eating the petals. So organza bags, you put them over the buds before they even start to bloom, and you tie them tight at the bottom, and then the blooms open perfectly, and the bugs can't get to them.
That's sweet, and that all just happens real easy, right? No length of time involved in doing all that.
It's a little bit of time.
Just a little bit. All right, Jenna, I certainly appreciate your time. I know you got other things in the background going on there, so
no, that's okay.
I'm going to see if your dad's on here. Jim, can you get a voice for us?
I listen to my dad talk every day, so I'm going to go ahead and exit now.
Hey, Marty, Jim Halbeisen, before you bring Jim Seiler on, I want to mention to you that if you talk to some of our other DMs, they make potting mixtures to start seeds, for specialty vegetables and that type of thing.
Oh.
And you could get some real good ideas from those guys to get her a potting blend that I think would get her out of the chute the way she wants to.
Yeah, if you can give mixes, that'd be great.
That's the network, Jenna. That's what we try to use. So
and I'm happy to post and send you guys pictures of what, one without it looks like and one with it looks like.
Sounds great.
That'd be great.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jenna.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Jim, are you able to speak with us? You'll have to *6 yourself to unmute. I'm not hearing anything.
Let me call my mom and have her help him.
maybe you fell asleep in the recliner.
Okay. I'll call my mom. What does he need to do? *6
to unmute.
*6. All right. I'll call him.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I got unmuted.
You got you. Okay.
Didn't I raise such a sweet young lady?
Yes. Well, I was trying to figure out how she done her sales because people don't react to me the same way they do to her whenever they. But we're dealing with some. Go ahead.
Thank God she looks like her mother.
We're dealing with some interesting weather again, Jim.
Yes.
Tell us what you got as far as ice down there. I know there's a lot of tree damage, but did you get any damage on your fruit trees?
I'm not seeing a lot of damage on fruit trees, but as far as I'm concerned, the person that's running this whole thing, he can keep this kind of weather in Minnesota. I'm not real pleased with all of this kind of weather. We ended up with right at 3/4 inch ice and about 4 or 5 inches of snow, and I guess we're going to get about 6 more inches of snow tomorrow. This is not common for us down here. We are not used to that. Most of the time, whenever we get a snow or an ice, it seems like the next day it's gone, but it looks like it's going to hang with us a little bit. I was just a little bit concerned about ice on the trees and how long the buds can survive without oxygen or whatever, some things like that.
That's an unknown that you're going to have to tell us, I guess. I've done some digging online and can't find much information about that.
I can't either.
Just interesting. I read something from Iowa State talking about how a tree survives through the winter, and peaches was listed in a group that said that the hardening off period, I guess, is what your terminology you had used.
Yeah.
They dehydrate themselves, and they mentioned in there that increases the sugar levels inside and works just about like antifreeze. And that's pretty much what we've been saying all these years that you've been saving blossoms, is that we're getting more minerals in and getting a higher concentration. So we'll have to see. You'll have to let us know what that ice does over a period of time, if it does anything to them at all.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned that this Patoka Lake winery is using some of your peaches to make brandy and other things. How many peaches did you take them?
Oh my! Ooh, we took we put them in a 18 bushel bin. Of course, that was just basically the throwaways.
Right.
Overripe, everything that was overripe. I'm thinking we took them at least. I think we took them about 10 bins through the year, through the whole season.
Okay.
Well, I know he has pressed a lot of brandy. I don't know much about that, but I know they've pressed quite a bit.
Right. Now, for the people that have the calendars in front of them, if you flip over to the August picture, that's where we had Mac Webb there with you from the Hymn and Herd Winery with his award-winning. That was an international competition, right?
Yeah, down in Texas.
He won best overall fruit wine using your peaches.
Yes.
So is he's still playing with that too? Did he get peaches from you this year?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I figured he had to make some because I know Chris Cole's put an order in for next year, so he wanted to buy some of that.
And he has sold very quickly on what he made whenever he makes our wine. So, which that's, of course, a lot of local, they're going to buy it. And I'm not much of a wine drinker, but it has a very good taste.
Right. Now, Jenna had mentioned that as far as raising the flowers, she just did pretty much whatever you told her to do. But at one point, she was panicked a little with a little bit of white stuff growing on her soil in that. What did you do with that, and how did you treat it for her?
I treated it with growers and a little bit of sulfur, extra sulfur in the growers. Course water. I think what I did was I put like 2 ounces of growers in a gallon of water and a tablespoon of sulfur.
And that was a Yellow Jacket, I think you said the product of the sulfur?
Yeah.
It's just an elemental sulfur, dissolve that, and that cleaned it up right away. Yes. And so when she was raising her flowers, you were just, accidentally driving by with the sprayer, or how'd that work?
Accidentally, some growers got sprayed on her flowers.
Okay.
every 7 days.
Every repeated accidents. I see.
Repeated accident happened to get sprayed on her flowers whenever she wasn't paying attention, so I could prove to her what growers would do, and she just couldn't understand why all the other growers were not really, they couldn't get the pretty flowers like she had all the way up into October.
Interesting. Very interesting.
She got, last year, she realized what we were doing, and as the first year, that'd been 2 years ago. And so now she's pretty well on a normal, every time she sprays, it's with the growers to get rid of the molds and all of that kind of stuff. And I am a big fan of sulfur, as far as your fungicides. A lot of the growers have got away from that. I will not get away from sulfur.
Straightforward sulfur.
Yeah. I mean, I try to get, basically 20 to 30 pounds per acre whenever I spray for fungicides.
Right.
It's just, you can't build up immunity to sulfur, where all the other fungicides, some people are talking about they're starting to see some immunities on it.
I got you.
Sulfur, you don't have that problem. And that's why you use it early and use it often.
I got you. And
so, hey, Marty, can I jump in?
Go.
Yeah. Hey, Jim,
Yep.
I get a very incessant question all the time. And it's other peach growers, and then it's just the regular farmer that's got a peach tree. If you know that the tree has, you've green break and you've got cold temperatures coming in, what is your protocol as far as how many hours ahead of the cold weather that you like to spray? And then do you have a volume per acre that you feel is a go-to volume for you?
I've kind of bounced around with the when we need to get it on. Do you need to get it on? Of course, most time that happens, you're in the early spray schedules anyway. So every 7 to 10 days, you're putting a spray on.
I got you.
And I go from the first spray from my, right at whenever they're starting to show pink, I'm putting a gallon per acre of growers on. And what it seems like to me, I want at least 4 gallons of growers on before when that bloom's happening, when we're starting to see, okay, we could get some cold temperatures. I want at least 4 gallons. And what I will do is whenever they start saying, okay, say I'm 3/4 bloom and they're saying it's going to get 25 or 26 degrees. 3 or 4 days before that, I'm looking at the weather. Are we going to have a rain? What are we going to have? What's my spraying conditions? So if I can get that on 2 or 3 days before, I want to get that on. Now, what I did last year or 2 years ago, we were looking at that, and I put 2 gallons to the acre on rather than 1 gallon, and which got me up. The one year I had 6 gallons before a freeze, and another year I had 4 gallons on before a freeze. I would say at least 4 gallons on before you see a freeze. I didn't see a lot of difference in the 6 gallon and the 4 gallon years, just basically, the livability of the buds that I had out there.
Sure.
So I would say anywhere between that 4 and 6 is what I don't know what anything below 4 would do, and I don't know what anything above 6 would do. How's that?
Sure. That's
But
good. That
between 4 and
gives
6
guys a
is what I
parameter
like
to work with.
Yeah.
So, Red Dragons and inversion fans aren't really your preferred method of keeping blossoms from freezing?
No, I Marty, you've been around me enough. You understand what I was probably getting ready to say there, what you can do with them, but I'm going to be nice.
Well, I had to chuckle because reading that information from Iowa State, and they mentioned in there that the peach blossom that's already in full bloom will not survive below 32 degrees. I thought, wow. How are we on time, Mr. Halbeisen?
Yeah, that's very good. You guys did an excellent job. If Jim's got anything else he wants to chatter about, otherwise we're past the 10 o'clock hour and guys are falling asleep on me. So you did an excellent job, and thank Jim's daughter. That was absolutely excellent.
Well, as I say, she takes after her mother. Thank God.
We all understand. So, hey, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate it. The interest, and again, it looks, this cold weather early, you got a whole different animal you're dealing with, but we're getting a lot of feedback throughout the organization with guys that have had trouble, with these later frosts. And it's generated quite a bit of interest for us. And again, we just want to they've got to figure it out like you did, but we can give them some parameters to work with. We think that could be a good start for them, basically.
I would like to add that I don't think that it can be used as a Hail Mary savior right at the last minute. I haven't seen anybody really try putting 5 gallon on in one whack right before. Maybe that would help. I don't know. But, he's working on this through a progress and then maybe giving it a couple gallon slug. But to just throw a gallon on there the night before, I think you're just wasting your time.
Yeah, it's a Hail Mary, basically. So.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen.
I start with it. It's part of my program, from word go.
Very good. Very good. So I appreciate it, guys. I guess I better shut it off so that these guys can get their beauty rest because they all need it. So. Thanks, Marty.
Jim.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it.
Jim, Jenna, Marty, Terry, thanks for everyone who joined tonight. The next call we've got scheduled is going to be February 13th, I believe. So keep an eye out for that. And everyone have a good night and a good rest of your January. Take care. Bye.
This podcast has been brought to you by Growers Mineral. Please visit growersmineral.com.